very end. I was walking out Shabbos afternoon. I said we're stopping at 4:00 in the afternoon. Right. So we stopped, and then they asked questions till 5:00. So that was the end of that. But I davened mincha already. So anyway, okay. We are.
Temporary?
I said I'm short some my room.
As in you just fully lost.
No, I'm cleaning my room today, so hopefully I'll
Okay, so in the end of verse Daled, we're learning about Ava. We learned about Yira. We learned about Yira. What is Aveda? Vavadatim, Lashon of Aveda Sa'evid. Reishis Aveda Vikar V'Sharash is Yira. The basis of all Aveda, the beginning of a relationship is commitment to that relationship, which is Kabbalah Soul. That what has to be done gets done. And the Rebbe does have that amazing line, even then he's in a place where he hasn't changed himself, changed his ratzon, his intellect, his midos, he still does what has to be done, which is what Kabbalah Soul is all about. But obviously what we want to do is, yes, change those things. We'd like to change our will and change our seichel and change our midos. So that's all about Ava. So we got down to the bottom of page 328, and the Rebbe begins to discuss the difference between Ava and Yira. And it's really quite an amazing difference. This hook, there's nothing left of whatever was growing in there in the water. As I was looking at it, the water tank is behind it, so I see this sort of green tint. I says, what's that?
Mint flavor.
I couldn't really get, so I pulled it up, and sure enough, at the bottom had this science experiment of this green stuff. Just a little bit, but just a little bit is, yeah, right.
They say about the green.
Well, that's how penicillin was invented. Right? So, okay, the Hine. We're 5 lines up. The difference between the Aveda of Ava and Yira. Ba'aveda the Yira of Kabbalah Soul levada. In the Aveda of Yira and Kabbalah Soul alone, without Ava, now, that doesn't mean a person has necessarily not changed himself. Because all sorts of people from Kabbalah Soul is real Aveda. They find it very, very difficult. Right? Their Aveda is Kabbalah Soul. Right? They just find it very difficult to do something because it has to be done and they have to understand it and it has to come from them and they have all that. Right? Okay, so then for them, Kabbalah Soul is going to be an Aveda. They're going to have to change themselves to do Kabbalah Soul. But in general, we'll talk about it in a couple of minutes. In general, Yira, being a law-abiding citizen, does not necessarily demand any serious change. Again, for some people it does, but not necessarily. Whereas we'll see by Ava, it necessarily demands change. So it's possible that someone loishines atzmei, v'loi pa'al bira v'zikuch nefesh habahamis, hasn't brought about a rectification and a purification of his nefesh habahamis, hasn't brought about a real change in his nefesh habahamis. And now the Rebbe says something fascinating. Kivisha roim b'muchash, as we say b'muchash, we see with our senses. In other words, we see in a concrete way. Sheyeshnam keila, there are people. Sheyeshlam yir shemaim tivis. They have natural yir shemaim. Ubiz beinenus kala, and with a simple contemplation, Yecholim heim la'orer es yira, they are able to arouse their awe, fear, liyar sumer avas itev, in order to turn away from evil and do good. If they have a taiva, they just have to think about it for a second and say, I'm not interested in that, that's not where I am, that's not who I am, and they're done. Vafal pikein. Well, we're going to talk about this person in a minute, but first let's see what the Rebbe says about it. Vafal pikein. Gam kasher, even when hanagosim b'sur merav asay tev b'shleimus, that their behavior in terms of turn away from evil and do good is complete. I mean, this is a very, very firm person. Firm guy, serious guy. Nisheres nafshem b'bahamis betokfa ubegvurasa katoldasa. The nefesh b'bahamis has stayed in its strength, in its power, like it was born. Why? Well, because Just naturally a law-abiding citizen. Right? So now, the Rebbe's talking about it obviously in a frum context. What does that mean? He's describing the type of kid we all want. The type of kids that you want. You want a kid who just does what he's supposed to do, right? It's not a big deal. Gets up, goes to school, enjoys school, studies, gets good marks, has friends, doesn't have bad friends, has good friends, does good stuff, right? Nice kid, everybody wants that kind of kid. Okay. They're not all going to be like that. Fine. Okay, in a Goyish context, Clem, the law-abiding citizen from Nebraska. Clem mows his lawn, pays his taxes, has ID to vote. He votes in every election, goes to vote, doesn't send any, goes to vote, waits in line and votes. Right? He's a member of the Rotary Club and the whatever, something else, right? Law-abiding citizen. Doesn't speed, drives 20 in school zones, 30 in the city, 55, 60, whatever the high, whatever state it is, well, Nebraska, I don't know whatever the speed limit is in Nebraska, that's what he drives. He's a law-abiding citizen. Clem was like that as a kid. He was like that as a teenager. He probably, did a couple of things as a teenager that were a little, he probably got drunk once. Everybody's getting drunk every night. Clem probably got drunk once. Right? Maybe even got sick. Who knows? Clem, law-abiding Clem. So now, is the reason Clem is so law-abiding is because Clem is just, been misbeinen on the greatness of American culture, and he realizes he just has to be a positive part of that and do good things. Not at all. Clem does what he does because that's just who Clem is. Clem's just that kind of guy. Are there people like that? There's millions of people like that. All sorts of people. What you and I would call law-abiding citizens, right? Okay, so now in a frum context, put it back in frum context. A person like that, obviously, that the so-called Baal Tshuva late beginner, so it's going to be a little different. He's not going to. Yes, he can have that personality once he becomes frum, but obviously there's going to be all sorts of things going on in order for him to actually get the frum kind. What about a kid who grew up frum? Could he be like Clem? Yeah, why not? How do you act in Borough Park? That's how this kid acts. How do you act in Pico Robertson? That's how he acts. Right? That's what he does. Goes to school, does his homework, goes to shul with his father every week. There's Farbrengens for kids. He goes to the Farbrengens for kids. He's just a good kid. That's what he's supposed to do. Has he necessarily brought about any change in his nefesh habahamis? No, that's just the way he is. That's how he's wired. Now, again, you want kids like that, right? That's a big bracha because he's going to be happier. Right? Kids who are successful are happier than kids who are, fighting the system and don't get along with their teachers and don't do their homework and they're just not as happy. Okay. And, which is the chicken and which is the egg is hard to find out. Why aren't they happy? Because they're not doing well, or they're not doing well because they're not happy, or it's a combination of both. Okay. So the Rebbe is about to say quite an astounding thing about this guy. This is a really good guy. He's frum. His mom is frum. He goes to every father's and son's learning thing with his son now. He grew up. Takes his son to every father's and son learning thing. Motzi Shabbos in the shul. Those are the good guys, right? Like they take their sons. Motzi Shabbos, he's tired. Nope. Some fathers and son learning tonight. Takes his son, sits with him. He learns with him. He doesn't just sit there and schmooze with him. He learns with him. Does his homework with him. Sits and learns his homework with his homework. He does the homework with his kid a couple of minutes every night. Sits down with him. How you doing? Any troubles? If there's a problem, he'll sit with him for half an hour. Work through a page of Gemara. Great guy. But what? His nefesh habahamis hasn't changed because this is his nefesh habahamis. It's just who he is. And to appreciate it, just take it out of a Jewish context. Yeah, there's people like that. Okay, well, that guy doesn't have a nefesh elokis Clem, but he's still a good guy. He's a law-abiding citizen. He does what he's supposed to do, and he's always done that. Being a good kid. He was one of the the monitors at the crosswalk with those little signs. He's one of the kids who volunteered to stand at the crosswalk with those signs, right, and stop the cars and let all the kids pass. It's one of those. I mean, someone does it, right? Some kids do it, right? I mean, not anybody in the room, I assume, but someone did it. Okay, fine, for no pay, just because it's the right thing to do. Okay. Va'adarabba, the Rebbe says, as time goes on, Nischaz Kayesa, this Nefesh Bahamis gets even stronger. Behem Shechazman, as time passes. Why? By virtue of the fact that he's used a lot. What does the Rebbe mean? The Rebbe means what you and I would call basic creature comforts. Clem. When Clem was 15, could he sleep on the floor? No problem. Clem's 45. Can he sleep on the floor? No. Clem wants a bed. Clem's gotten used to certain creature comforts. Obviously, it's easier to sleep in a bed than on the ground, right? I mean, but as you grow older, there's certain things that you get used to in Gashmias, and you need them. Now, you don't need them, but you need them. Okay. So most 45-year-olds aren't going to have a very good night's sleep on the floor. Well, why could they sleep when they're 15 on the floor and they couldn't sleep? What, there's something wrong with their body? Well, okay, they'll be made a little krechsen and echsen when they're 45, but they're just used to something, and they've gotten used to it over the years because they've been doing that for a long time, so they find it hard to do without. Because there are all sorts of 45-year-olds who probably sleep on something akin to the ground, right? There's places where people don't have Sealy Posturepedic mattresses to sleep on every night, with a pillow or two pillows, depending on which. And if there's only one, oh my gosh, I had such a bad night's sleep, I only had one pillow. I couldn't find my other pillow, right? Or, a cup of coffee in the morning becomes something important. Well, it's just used to it. Why? You never Shabbat likes it, and it's just used to it. Okay. So never Shabbat good. No, but is it an avay or is it terrible? Am I dying? Is a person falling in their avodah? No, not at all. Not the rubble. But the Nefesh Bahamis, as time goes on, gets a little stronger without any work. Gets stronger because we just get used to certain things in Elam Hazah that we've decided are. And if we're honest, we won't say they're necessary, but to a certain degree, we've turned them into necessary, right? So, if you have to really give in and have a cup of Maxwell House, so then you say, oh my gosh, okay, I'll drink the Maxwell House, but whoa, this is really rough, I'm addicted to the caffeine. Okay, so I need the Maxwell House, but I mean, this is not really what we had in mind. He says as he takes another sip of his espresso. No, these things you get used to, right? So that's the way the Nefesh Bahamis works, and they're not terrible, horrible things. We're just talking about this guy. He's frum. He's into it. He sits and learns. He's mamish a good guy. But what? Gives stucca, he learns, he supports his family, he's a wonderful father, wonderful husband. But that's just kind of the guy he is. And it's not necessarily an inyan and avodah. And so his Nefesh Bahamis over time, not only is it hasn't been changed positively, it might even become a little stronger. Not in any way, shape, or form causing him problems in his avodah b'cave, and the Rebbe says, Shal yedei avodah miyira. And since the Aveda Miyura, and again, you have to say doesn't necessarily. There are people for whom Kabbalah's being, the law-abiding citizen is just like pulling teeth. They find it so hard to do what someone else told them to do. They just like, if it doesn't come from them, it's just extremely difficult for them. Okay, we say they could, but they said it's going to take work to overcome that. And since this person, through his avodah of Yira, what's that? Kabbalah's soul. He does what he's supposed to do. He hasn't brought about a beater and zikuk in Nefesh Bahamis. So now the Rebbe says something very heavy. Loi Pa'al, he also hasn't brought about, and remember we said there were two aspects to davening, in two aspects to avodah in general, elevating the Nefesh Bahamis, but also connecting the Nefesh Elokis to the Eibishter. Loi Pa'al gam hischabrus the Nefesh Elokis, the joining together, the connection of the godly soul im shor shemakara, with its source. Why? How do you connect the Nefesh Elokis to its source? How do you connect the Nefesh Elokis back to its place in Elokus from whence it came? Ki hischabdus Nefesh Elokis, the connection of Nefesh Elokis, hi al yedei milui ritzoni yisbarach, is to fulfilling the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'hari ritzoni yisbarach, the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is sheneshama tevarer es haguf v'nefesh habamis, that the neshama should come into the body. We saw this in Bas Ligani also. The neshama should come into the body and rectify the goof and the nefesh habamis, and in Tani B'Sava Gam Chelkei Ba'olam, also his portion in the world. Ubishvil Zeh Yard and Neshama Lamata, and that's why the neshama came below, to affect the goof and the nefesh habamis. Shai neshama atzma, the neshama itself, ain't it tzricha tikkun? She doesn't need a tikkun. She's fine. She loves God. She fears God. V'yiridasa Lamata, and her descent below, Hikadei, is not for her. There are advantages to the neshama by virtue of its descent below, and that's discussed in Chassidus. But all things being equal, the inyan of the neshama descending below is not for the neshama herself, but rather kedei levara as a goof and nefesh habamis, to make a dir b'tachtenim, to take physicality and change it, to rectify the goof and the nefesh habamis. V'kol zman, and to the as long as shaloi pa'al, the person hasn't caused birur nefesh habamis, a rectification of the nefesh habamis. Loy milas ritzainer, he hasn't fulfilled the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'lochein loy pa'al hischabrus the nefesh elokis im shorish makars. He hasn't connected his nefesh elokis with the Eibusher. How do we connect the nefesh elokis with the Eibusher? By doing what the Eibusher wants. What does the Eibusher want? He wants my nefesh habamis to change. My nefesh habamis is edel. He's a law-abiding citizen. He's Clem. He's a Jewish Clem. Klemsky. Right? He's a Jewish Clem. He's a good guy. He does what he's supposed to do. He's mamish b'seiner. Okay. Good kid in school. Sat in yeshiva. Sat and learned. Got married. Had some kids. Gives tzedakah. Just a good guy. But what? It wasn't a Veda. It's just who he is. Again, every single one of us, that's such a bracha that a person is such a person. It's an incredible bracha. And you want your kids to be kids who are like that. Okay, but what's the challenge for that person? Not to be satisfied with who they are. I mean, they're doing the right thing, right? But that person also has to realize that it has to bring about real change in himself. And if not, so then the Rebbe says a very heavy thing here, Mamish. He's not connecting to the Eibusher, but he's not doing what the Eibusher wants. I understand. He's putting on tefillin. He's giving tzedakah. He wears a very, very mechudik tzitzis every day. He's a very kind person. He's a good guy. So he's doing all those things that the Eibusher wants. But the Eibusher wants panemius also. The Eibusher wants you to change yourself, and he doesn't have to get done everything that has to get done. So he just never got around to it. So the Rebbe says this guy's not connecting to the Eibusher. No. That's why you never know, right? You see some other guy who's like struggling like crazy, right? But what's he doing? He's bringing real changes in himself. It's slow, but he's doing it. And for him, every mitzvah is partially like pulling teeth, this guy, he bought an espresso machine for the shul. He's such a good guy, this guy, right? He didn't want them to drink Maxwell Ice. He wants everybody to experience the joys of a good espresso, right? And there's a little foamy thing on the side. You can foam it up with put in milk and foam it up. Okay, he's really a good guy. And this guy over here is struggling. He misses shul 2 days a week because he can't get up. But who knows if this guy isn't connecting to the Eibusher more powerfully than this guy on a certain level, right? Because he's bringing about such real change in himself. Because Yira doesn't demand change. Yira demands that I do what I have to do. What if I'm just naturally inclined to do that? So fine, I'm in good shape. I don't have to exercise. Just in good shape. My heart, lung function is fantastic, and I don't have to do anything. Unbelievable metabolism. I'm going to stay thin and in good shape, and I don't really have to work out. No problem. Yeah, I walk around like everybody else. Right? Amazing. Are there people like that? Probably. Okay. Such an amazing thing. Sometimes I teach this mimer in a sem of 18-year-old Lubavitcher girls, and to get into the sem, you have to be very, very good girl. Right? Not a good girl. Everybody's a good girl, but you know what I mean. They have to, top marks and the behavior, and it's not easy. So we get to this. I always just look at them and say, and I really like these girls. I mean, I'm not saying this to annoy them. Saying, it's you, right? You got into this sem because all the girls in Chitrik, right? Almost all of them, right? What? This kid, good kid, did everything. She's Beseder. She was the valedictorian in grade 12. So they're fantastic. And then they read this and they go, oh my gosh, right? But I made it into Chitrik. I mean, I'm talking about MSY because that's where I teach everything. But your sister flashed in I met Yaakov's sister yesterday because I bring in the sem where she learns. Very, very sweet young lady. And it was very kind of her to come tell me. She made me so happy when she said she was her sister. She was her sister. So, right? This is unbelievable. This is what Rabbi Groner meant when they asked him, what's the Lubavitcher Rebbe like? He said, my Rebbe is a slave driver. I understand. This guy's the frummest little ever-ready bunny. Is it ever-ready? Duracell. Is the frummest little Duracell bunny there's ever been. He's just non-stop little frum guy, Yeah, but why don't you start connecting to God? What do you mean? I put on tefillin and I give tzedakah and I verbring with the community every week and I teach 4 classes and I go to work and I run a business and I employ people I don't have to employ because they need a parnasa and It's an amazing guy. And of course all those things connect him to the Eibusher in a very, very serious way. But there's something missing. What? This is just who he is. I mean, I was saying he didn't do anything. Whoa. Lucky him that he's this way. Okay, so what demands change? Av is going to demand change. Why? Let's see. That's why Av is a more powerful and important Aveda. But Dafka b'Aveda ba'Ahava, specifically the Aveda ba'Ahava, Sh'al Yoda, Peil, Bira v'Zikuch, Nefesh ba'Amis, that through it, a person brings about a change in the Nefesh ba'Amis. Why? Because what's your natural state, no matter who you are, of your Nefesh ba'Amis, who you're going to love? Yourself. And in order to love the Eibusher, now again, when we're talking about loving the Eibusher, we're talking about the Nefesh ba'Amis loving the Eibusher. Nefesh Elokis loves the Eibusher. But to get my Nefesh ba'Amis to love the Eibusher means, by definition, I have to bring about change in my Nefesh ba'Amis. My Nefesh ba'Amis won't naturally love the Eibusher. My Nefesh ba'Amis could naturally desire to serve the Eibusher. Why? Well, I grew up in a way that's what's considered reasonable behavior, and that's what I do, just like Clem mows his lawn. And pays his taxes. Clem pays taxes on the $100 he gets every year from his mother in the mail. What do you call it with your taxes? What do you do? If you get money, when you tell them, what's it called?
Taxes.
Yeah, when you taxes and you came and you're supposed to tell them all the money you got. And there's a word for it. Not report, but there's a word for it in taxes. Okay, so Clem does that with his $100, right? That he gets from his mother. We don't want to say when he gets his first mother. It's like end of December time, right? Right? Okay, sorry now. No. Josh isn't going to hear one more word of the mimer. He's going to be trying to find this word for the next 20 minutes. Like this, it's over. That's for sure. Right? Okay? So, right, when you do whatever you do when you're with your taxes, whatever, right? You something all the money you got. Okay? So, Clem. Declare. That's what it is. Thank you very much. That's the one. He declares the $100. Anybody do that? Clem does. Right? Why? Because that's just the way Clem is. Right?
Classic Clem.
Right.
Committed.
Is that a Veda? No. What's the Aveda? Well, okay, so Clem has no Aveda. Clem should just keep doing what Clem's doing, and he's okay. Okay, but what about the Clem that grew up in Borough Park, right? Crown Heights, Flatbush, or some from neighborhood somewhere, right? Geula, Rehov Ben Svi 7, all these from places in the world. Right, so if Clem grows up there, so then what? So that then declaring that $100 isn't the be all. He has to be. He's supposed to declare $100. He's a good guy, but there's more. And what's the more? The more is the pneumius. And where's the pneumius come? Ava. Without the yira could happen without any change. The ava demands change. Why? Again, because it's not natural for the Nefesh Bahamis to love the Eibishter. It's natural for the Nefesh Bahamis to love itself, take care of itself, worry about itself, contemplate itself, talk about self-growth. That's the nature of the Nefesh Bahamis. What if I can get the Nefesh Bahamis to actually think that a loving relationship with the Eibishter is something important and something it should strive for? That itself is already a change in the Nefesh Bahamis. Even if I haven't made it, just getting my Nefesh Bahamis to think that way, big change. Because generally, the Nefesh Bahamis is interested in what's good for me. And what's good for me can be Torah mitzvahs. It doesn't have anything to do with loving God. Is it bad? It's not bad. It doesn't have anything to do with loving God yet. The Hine, Aveda, what's Aveda? He miloshin ibud oros. Now the Rebbe is bringing something that's brought in many places in Chassidus about Aveda. So again, we said Aveda isn't necessary with Yira. Again, it could be, but it doesn't have to be. Right? Whereas by Aved it has to be. And what is Aveda? So Aveda also doesn't just come from the words Aveda se'eved, but it also comes from the word ibud oros, working skins, right? Meaning taking part of the cow and working that leather so that it can be used for something positive, either tefillin, mezuzah, sefer Torah, or also you have to do the same thing to make a leather jacket, right? You have to work it. Ukashem should be ibud oros, and just like by ibud oros, working skins, yesh tzarech b'kama v'kama pa'ulos, there's the need for a number of actions, haba'is al yedei tircha v'yagia gedela, that come through great effort, ad shenasa or ma'ubad, until the or becomes worked, v'roi liyos, now the Rebbe is talking about it obviously in terms of Yiddishkeit, liyos klaf, so now it's klaf. Sheyichtavu alav parshias, so you can actually write parshias for tefillin on it, or you can write a mezuzah. This is a cow. Your tefillin is all cow, except the ink. Everything else, the threads. Yeah, wild. Amazing. Take a cow and turn it into this incredibly holy thing called tefillin. So it's a lot of work. It takes a long time to get from the cow to that. Okay. And some of the work is not so pleasant, right? Because if you the smell that when people work with leather, the smell is horrible. Ad kedei kach the halacha that it's brought in Maseches Kedushin and Hilchos marriage, that if someone says, I'll marry you on the condition that you don't work with leather, you're not a tanner, and he is, so then it's the marriage isn't a marriage. He didn't fulfill why? Because he's going to smell. He's going to stink. Because he's going to work with leather all day long, and he's going to come back from wherever. And today there's more chemicals than whatever they used in the old days, but whatever they used in the old days also was horrible stuff. And now it's all horrible chemicals, and it smells. I mean, whatever was in the horrible stuff they used to use is in the chemicals now. It's the same stuff, but it's just it's in a bottle on the shelf instead of whatever they used to use. But it's smelly stuff. Okay, hard work. From this we understand that Yira isn't the truest expression of Aveda. Why? Now the Rebbe says the words that we've been adding the whole time. Ki b'Yira ein hechrech. It's not absolutely necessary. Tzarich means it's needed. Hechrech means it's absolutely necessary. Ani tzarich lavo. I need to come. Ani muchrach lavo. I have to come. Right? Same word, but it's just the emphasis of it. Ein hechrech. It's not absolutely necessary. Sheti aveda. V'yigia gedei, that there should be aveda and yigia. The canal, like we said earlier, sheyesh nam kela. They're those people. Sheyesh lem yir shamayim tivis, that they're naturally inclined to just be law-abiding citizens. So again, that can express itself in Clem in Nebraska, or it can express itself in a Jewish kid who grows up and Baruch Hashem just enjoys everything he's doing and does it and is happy doing it. It is Baruch Hashem. That's just who he is. That's who he is, and that's who he's always been. That's incredible Baruch. V'lochin behechrech. Therefore, it's absolutely necessary liyos gam aveda mi'ava. It has to be aveda mi'ava because Ava demands change. Shabal yedei aveda v'yigir gedei ledavka. That comes through great effort. Yira doesn't necessarily. Again, there are people for whom it does. There are people from Kabbalah Soul is just so difficult. We had a son who, when he was in grade 8, Kita Ches, it was the year before yeshiva. So his Rebbe in Kita Ches told him, he's a very good Rebbe, he told him that he has to work on his Kabbalah Soul. He's not a Kabbalah Soulnik. Great kid, good marks, but he's not a Kabbalah Soulnik. He's got to be a Kabbalah Soulnik. Got to work on it before he goes to Yeshiva Katana, because it's an important thing to develop. So he worked on it in Baruch Hashem. Now he's married, house full of kids. Okay. Very successful educator. But it's a Kabbalah Soulnik. He worked at it. For him, it was work. Other brothers, same family, it wasn't work. It's who they are. Different kids, different things. Right? But there are kids who are just naturally inclined to sort of go with the flow and do, and not in a bad way, in a good way. Right? Not go with the flow because, they're square. Doing the right thing doesn't mean you're square. It means you're a good kid, right? It's just the kids who are jealous of the kids who are doing the right things that say they're square. They'd also like, I remember Rabbi Levinger was bringing with a bunch of 18-year-old SEM students here in Yerushalayim, it wasn't Yerushalayim, here in Eretz Yisrael. And it was a school that had a significant population, not all of them, but a significant population of girls who did not succeed in their education until that point. Right? And they had, fought the system and blah, blah, blah. So I happened to be driving by. I was at a chasna nearby, and I knew Rabbi Levinger was for bringing in that place. It was not in Yerushalayim. So I asked him, can I pop in after the chasna? I'm not going to stay. Yeah, sure. So I taught in that school. So I sat down and just listened to him for, I said something for 10 minutes, but I listened to him for half an hour. And he said something to them. He asked them a question. It was so interesting. He asked them, do you want your daughters to go through what you went in high school, or do you want them to be those girls who are enjoying it, studying and getting, top marks and just enjoying what's going on? Your daughters, what do you want them to be? Every girl in the class said, of course I want my daughter to just have a good time in high school and not go through what I went through, right? Now these are girls who are they're 18 years old. They're just little kids, right? I mean, they just finished going through it, right? They've still got the scars. Every one of them. It was such an interesting question to ask. I never would have thought of asking the question. It was fascinating. I was really looked at him. Whoa, it was so interesting. Everybody wants to be Clem. It's easier to be Clem, right? You just do and it goes, and and generally Clem's happy, right? Because Clem isn't fighting the world all day long, right? Okay, not fighting his teacher, he's not fighting his boss, he's just Clem has his issues. He's not perfect. Right? Clem has a kid who's not Clem, and he doesn't know how to deal with him. Well, I understand. Why won't you just do your homework? Oh, Dad, come on. There's a party tonight. Yeah, but... So poor Clem and his kids going off to, Lincoln. Is Lincoln? That's in Nebraska. He's going to Lincoln because there's a big party in Lincoln. He's going to go party in Lincoln instead of do his homework. Oh, come on, Johnny. You got... Doesn't Clem have a kid's name, Johnny? Clem probably has. What's Clem's wife's name?
Jen.
Jenny. Clem and Jenny. Right, okay. Clem and Jenny. Jenny's blonde, for sure. Jenny was the homecoming queen. She married Clem. Clem maybe was on one of the teams, the basketball team, the football team. Maybe he was the quarterback.
History of Clement.
Clem, the law-abiding citizen. So turn Clem into, little Mendy. So it's so amazing what they're always saying here. It's just amazing. Right? And when they say Chassidus man pnimi, so this is what they mean. Of course you have to do what you have to do. You have to the Kabbalah Sol. Reishis Avedi Mikadav V'Shars. That's what the Rebbe said. He told us it has to be Kabbalah Sol. You don't want to. You haven't changed your seichel. You haven't changed your ratzon. You haven't changed your midas. You're into the same things. You're connected to the same things. You're thinking about the same things. Just get it together to do what God wants and stop being silly. Okay, that's step one. Step two, start out changing. Now, Clem never had to change to do step one. And that's why step one isn't the Yikar Aveda, because it's possible to do without changing. And the Yikar is that the Nefesh Elokis comes into the Guf in order to bring about a change in the Guf and the Nefesh Abamis. And if I didn't, there's something lacking in my Aveda, as frum as the Jewish Clem might be. He's very frum. He's really frum. But just always been there. He was, at his bar mitzvah, instead of, saying a pilpul, he made a siyum on a masechta. He's one of those kids. And his father didn't tell him to. He just said, Dad, I think I'm going to make a siyum on a masechta for my bar mitzvah. Oh, that's a good idea. That's a great idea. Father looks at the mother. And this kid, I was, hiding my tefillin in the back room, not putting them on for the first 2 months, so my father wouldn't know. And look at my kid, like, wow, must be you, he says to his wife. Okay. Baruch Hashem. It's just an amazing, amazing thing that the Rebbe says here. The canal. Sheyesh keili, sheyesh lam yir shemayim tivis. 5 lines up. V'lochen, we already read this, we're going to read it a little bit. There has to be Ava. Shabal yidei Aveda v'gia dafka. Ava demands change. Because you can't love God unless you change, because your Nefesh Bahamis doesn't naturally love God. And when you learn in Chassidus, and you will, about Ava Tivis, that's the Nefesh Elokis. It's not the Nefesh Bahamis. Here, the Rebbe talks about Yir Tivis, the Nefesh Bahamis. The Nefesh Bahamis having basic Yira. What's that? Discipline, Kabbalah Sol, commitment, does the right thing. There's people like that. Goyim and Jews. Umizeh moving Shemasha Kosev Avadim Mitzvah Elokeichem. Therefore, we understand Kai Hein Alaveda Miyira. It's shaykh to Yira because of the word Vavadetem, which is shaykh to an Eved. Shehi Reishis Aveda, which is the beginning of Aveda, which we learned in 327 over to 328. Umavur B'Kuntrus Aveda, Sheshlemus Aveda. Right? I'm sorry, Vehein al Veda Vava, and both also the Aveda Vava. Umavur B'Kuntrus Aveda, and it's explained in Kuntrus Aveda. The Rebbe Rashab wrote 4 kuntrasim, 4 pamphlets. Thank you. Pamphlets to the Chassidim, to the Tmimim, and 2 about davening, Kuntrus Aveda, davening and his beinus, Kuntrus Aveda and Kuntrus Tefillah. 1 about just Frumkeit in general, Kuntrus Umayan. And 1 about the need to study, to learn Chassidus, Kuntrus Eitz Chaim. Because Rebbe Shab had health issues and sometimes went to the resorts in the mountains to get healthy. And so he would send things to the Chassidim. That famous letter about Yutes Kislev, so that was sent. The Rebbe Shab wasn't in Lubavitch that year, Yutes Kislev. The letter we read, it's in the front of a Yom that we read from the Rebbe Shab, so he sent that letter to the Frierdiker Rebbe to read at the Farbrengen Yutes Kislev in the Yeshiva that year, because he wasn't there. He was at the spa, they called him. Right? Because he had health issues. Mm-hmm. So, what's Shleimus Aveda? Hein Miyera, Hein Miyav. Wow. Okay, part 2, done. Now part 3. What's part 3? How do you do this? Part 1, does our Aveda affect the Eibishter? We know the answer. Well, it's still there. Atik and Aruch are hanging out in there. No matter what happens on that board, Atik and Aruch can't be touched. You see that? Okay. All right, so we said what we said. What is Avodah? We just found out it's Avanira. How do you do that? Rest of the mind. Okay? So let's go. Let's go a little further. I just gave away my last copy. So I'll make more somewhere. There's got to be more. To explain what the Avodah is. Like, how do we do this? Mamshich b'kosav leisa mishakela b'kara. Right? The pasuk is v'vadim mizvah lokechem. That we just read this yesterday, right? V'vadim mizvah lokechem is the last pasuk in Shishi. The first pasuk in Shvi is leisa mishakela b'kara b'atzech. So that pasuk is telling us how to serve God. Don't be someone who chas v'sholem buries children or has a miscarriage. That's mishakela. And don't be akara, barren. Now, obviously, in Gashmias, that means do everything you can in order to avoid those things. In Ruchnias, it means whatever it's going to mean in Ruchnias. But that's going to be something I can actually do, so to speak. Okay. So the pasuk continues, and that part, that's why this mimer is called Leisim Mishakela, not Bevadat Misavel Lekechem. Up until now, you would wonder, we haven't even mentioned Leisim Mishakela. It hasn't shown up yet. Why is that the name of the mimer? Well, because of the whole rest of the mimer. Dehine, akara. What's an akara? He she'ena yoledes banim. Is a woman who can't give birth to children. Oh, so what's that in Ruchnias? So what are the children? We know what the children are. Abanim are Chochma and Bina, and the children are Av and Yu. Right? So the children. Right? So an akara, someone can't give birth to children. The kai, what's that in Ruchnias? Alamides, the emotional attributes of Av and Yira, which told us is Beinunus, which are the offspring of contemplation and meditation. Chochma and Bina. Sha'ava hi bechinas ben. Av is the quality of ben, something positive. Right? Av is the source of va'asei tev, do things. Ben, men are all about positive action, external strength, right? Expression. Women are all about internal strength. That's bas, surmira, turn away from evil, gvura, right? Freud bas melech panima, the strength of the woman is inner strength. Women are about essential being. Men are about function. Men do things. Women are something. That's why essential Yiddishkeit comes from a woman. How do you get Jewish being? The only person necessary for Jewish being is a Jewish woman. Right? Babies that come out of Jewish women are Jewish. Why? They get that from their mother. Interestingly enough, what shevet are they from? That's their father. That's expression. That's outside. Masculinity is outside. Femininity is inside. It's the difference between men and women. Okay. So Ben is Vasetev. That's Ava. Bas is Yira. That's why, interesting enough, we think of women as soft and kind. Women are gvura. That doesn't mean they're going to be more strict with their children. But women tend to be very gvuradik. Right? Men give more tzedakah than women. Lots more. It's not even close. Right? It's very interesting. Right? When you're pulling up to the immigration at an airport, and there's 3 men and 2 women, who do you go to? Who's not going to give you a hard time?
2 women.
Are you kidding? You don't travel enough. My wife, my completely liberated doctor wife, went to an all-girls high school in New York that was training them to be idiots and, feminists, and one of them is a Supreme Court justice now. Girl she went to school with, right? So my wife grew up that way. Baruch Hashem, she's done some changes in her life, right? Like all of us. Okay. When we travel together, the first thing she says here, go to the man. Women, they're going to assert their power. I have power over you. They want to show you that they have power because they're a woman who might not have power. No, but I'm a powerful woman. I'm going to show you. The last person you want to go to an immigration is a woman. You want to go to the man. Try to make the woman smile. Almost impossible. The man, we joke around with him. Remember once going with two kids. They both had American passports because our kids are Americans, and I had a Canadian passport. So we put them all down. We were in Canada. Put them all down. And Jorge was his name because we spent a while there schmoozing with this guy. He was such a fun guy. He says, "Oh gosh, you poor kids. So what? Your father's a Canadian? What an embarrassment." So my kids, I also burst out laughing. My kids burst out laughing. He says, "Canada? How did that happen? I mean, you look like good, solid American boys. How did you get up with a Canadian?" Like he went on and on. And there's all he's busy stamping the passports while he's doing this, not asking us any questions. Okay. See if that ever happens with a woman when you go through. Women are gvura. My wife says, whatever we go to the man. Then it must be true. If a woman says go to the man because they're not going to give us a hard time, then you know it's true. First, because they're always right, but just because it's so interesting. So women are gvura. Power. Wait until you marry one and you see what it takes to have children, and then you'll really be in awe of them. Mishakela. So that's the akar. Who's the mishakela? Let's just turn over the page and then we'll start. He led this avavira. This is someone who gives birth to avavira, but what? Elashen lem kiyum. They don't last. The avavira doesn't last. It's temporary. The Rebbe will explain that too. In this, and to the relative of this comes the command. Now here the Rebbe is saying it's a command, right? Before we asked, is it a havtacha? Is it a command? So we said, is it a promise? Serve God and you won't be this? Or is it serve God and something else, don't be this? Oh, so here the Rebbe is talking about the tzivui of it. Because here we're talking about the avodah of it. Don't be this. Don't be an akara. Now, how? How am I not supposed to? Okay, well, that's what the Rebbe is going to talk about. Leisi mishakela v'akara. She's beinanus tzarich liyos, that a person's contemplation of reality, life, God, tzarich liyos be'efen has to be in such a way she tiyeh mizeh, that there will be from this hayladas amides, birth of these emotions, v'amides yubakiyim, and these emotions will last. Real love, real fear. Let me not to the love of true minds omit impediments. Love is not love which alters when it alteration finds or bends or to remove or to remove. Oh no, it does never fix it. Mark that looks on tempests and is never shaken.
So Shakespeare.
Yes. Right? If that I forget the middle parts. I mean, rosy lips and cheeks within his bending sickle's compass come, meaning, they disappear, the rosy lips and the cheeks, but the love doesn't. In the end, if this be wrong and upon me proved, I never writ, I never wrote anything, and no man ever loved. Those are the last two lines. I remember they're very powerful lines. If this be wrong and upon me proved, I never writ, nor no man ever loved. Meaning he's sure about this one. Okay. Well, okay. Okay. So how do we get to that? Sha'az tia aveda of the avadim is v'alokechem kid the boy. Then the aveda will be as it should be. Ubir inyan, and we'll start the beer tomorrow. So now what? I've come to the conclusion that first of all, our aveda is unbelievable, incredible, and amazing, and we touch atzmus. Then we understood that what is aveda? Well, aveda is love and fear, and we understood why we need both. Now, so how do we do that? Sounds like a great idea. Now what do I do? Well, here you go. Takes longer than a week. The mimer and figuring out how to live it. Okay. It's nice to see you, Rabbi Kogan. I didn't mark your sister's paper yet.